So we're going to talk about terroir. Terroir, this wonderful concept of taste of place. So we're going to be talking about soil, microclimate, grape type, and how we farm. Soil, microclimate, grape type, and how we farm. So when we think about these four things, the soil, here we're on a massive limestone plateau, and you can see it behind me, great example of that massive limestone plateau, and the vines can grow right down through it. They can send their roots 4, 5, even 20 meters down through the limestone. Limestone is an amazing background for grapes and for vines because it offers them water when they need it. So they can get water by capillarity up through the stone. So they don't have wet feet, but they can have access to water. This is an important part of that soil part. But here we have clay, limestone, and flintstone, and we're going to see those more closely as we go through the experience. So we tasted sincerité and générosité, and that gives us a good opportunity to just see something else about microclimate. So microclimate is things like which way is the slope facing. So which way is the slope facing? Here you can see an east facing slope behind me, and east facing is good for morning sun. It's cooler morning sun than afternoon sun. So in fact, when we want to make something like a white wine, like this, the Semillon that we had in the Sincerité and the Sauvignon Blanc and the Générosité Semillon, these are both good on east-facing slopes. So of course these vines behind me are dry white wines, and these are actually the old Semillon. We'll get closer to them on one of the other videos. So let's carry on with this idea of soil, microclimate, grape type, and how we farm. We'll go back up to the Cabernet. So here I'm in the Cabernet Sauvignon that went into the Liberté Rosé that we're going to be trying. So the Liberté Rosé is from this Cabernet, and if you can look across at the expanse of this vineyard, you can see that it is pretty much on flat ground. So we're on a plateau parcel. It is very, very well exposed, so very good for Cabernet. Now we used it for Rosé for the first few years while it was young, but once it's older, we'll be putting it into our red wine. So it's quite unusual that we made a Rosé from it. But what's interesting as well as we stand here, I don't know if you can see, but the color of these leaves is actually pretty bright on the tips. You can see that it's very red. The actual leaves are very bright, and the color on the tips is real red. So this is telling us about the varietal, and of course when the grapes are out you can tell the varietal as well. We're going to talk about the varietal differences as we taste the wines, but also the characteristics. So Cabernet Sauvignon is a very fiery grape. It's one that has high alcohol, high acidity. It's got lots of peps. So as we taste it, just think of how the vines looked. So thinking about terroir and about this notion of soil, microclimate, grape type, and how we farm, and the two wines that we're having today, so the Sensualité and the Liberté. So two rosés. The first one, a pale rosé from Merlot, and you can see the Merlot behind me. It is on a north-facing slope. So if we think about the soil part, you can see the soil here. It is clay and limestone. Then we can see that the vines behind me, the sun is over that way, so that's east, and this is north facing. So we're on a north facing slope, which makes it a good place for making dry rosé. Even though Merlot, if you were making it for red wine, you'd probably want it in a more exposed position like some of our plateau parcels. Here, this is a really great Merlot for making things like a dry rosé, like the one that we have as the example, and also for making sparkling rosé. So unfortunately, we don't have the sparkling in the packs, but the sparkling rosé is a wonderful dry rosé, and we'll talk about that when it comes out. So we think about grape types, the grape types all have their characteristics, but they also have the terroir that they like. So Cabernet definitely best in a hot place like this, on this really well exposed plateau parcel, whereas the Merlot can handle something a little bit cooler. So for example, the north facing slope where we were for the rosé, but also some of our slopes that are slightly more east facing up on the plateau really behind me on the top, and also round next to where we were in the east facing part of the Semillon a few minutes ago. So this is the Cabernet, and we will be tasting Liberté shortly.